Today, I'm going to tell you the best argument for not going to college. As you can see, right there, there's my degree. I went to college. I'd actually say there's a number of things about going to college that are extremely underrated in the modern day. But one thing I don't see people talk about is specifically the financial component that I'm going to talk about today that seems like it's something very valuable for people to know. Colleges like to advertise that on average, those people that earn a college degree, usually I think it's referencing a bachelor's degree, earn about $1.5 million more in their careers than do non college graduates. And I just think that's a important starting point to start our references from so we have an idea of what type of numbers we're talking about when we're talking about earnings for college graduates and maybe other things like debt, but I'm really not even going to touch on that in this video. For our scenario, we need to assume a few things. The first thing is, for most college students, I've seen it be the case where parents are still willing to help them. So in this scenario, let's say you don't go to college, but your parents are still allowing you to live at home to some degree. The second thing is that if you don't go to college, you can find a job somewhere that will pay you at least $15 an hour, which I don't think in today's world is terribly impossible. I'm not saying everybody could do it, but I think most people could find some job that would pay them $15 an hour and give them 40 hours a week of work. The next thing, like I said, is that 40 hours a week of work they have. The fourth, just to kind of give the argument a little validity to the other side, is I want to assume that they're in a high income tax state. So we'll say their income tax in this state is California's income tax for that bracket at $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, every week of the year would be about an additional 4% on top of federal income tax. Then let's say the potential student in this scenario, the child that's living at home with the parents, is still asked to pay for some things now that they're an adult, but not many things. So let's say that comes out to be roughly $100 a week in expenses that they didn't have to pay for before for being able to continue living at home. So if they make $15 an hour at 40 hours a week, that potential student, instead of going to school, is working, then they've made $600. After taxes in this scenario, they're going to take home about $504. So let's just say that the parents take $104 from them and they have $400 left a week. They're going to take that $400 a week they have left over and they're going to invest that into some fairly standard stuff. Let's just call it the market. But if you don't know much about that, I'd try to look up the basics of investing, look up things like the S&P 500, mutual funds, or ETFs. And over the course of 5 years, they're going to invest that $400 every week for 5 years, because 5 years is actually the average it takes people to finish a bachelor's degree, even though, roughly speaking, we usually like to talk about bachelor's degrees taking 4 years to complete. Now, if that money was being invested every week, then at this point, after 5 years, the individual would have $114,931.18. But instead of taking that money and doing anything at all with it, we're just going to leave it invested until the age of 65. If you want to get nuanced into this, you would move it into more specific accounts than just things like generic brokerage accounts, and you would actually go into things more specifically like IRAs and other things, but I don't want to focus too much on that point in this video. You can look that up if you're interested, and that would help you in this process as well. At the age of 65, if you just left that money invested after you invested that initially after 5 years and didn't touch it at all, the money at age 65 when you retire, which is roughly speaking when people like to retire, you'd have $2,173,407.81. Now, The last point that I think is ridiculously important to point out about this is not necessarily just the power of investing, but one thing is for sure, if you can front load your investing somehow, it will drastically change how much money you can have, because a dollar invested yesterday is worth more than a dollar invested today at a very simple scale. Now, if you wait until after college, you're probably not only going to come out of college and you may make a decent amount of money, you may make more than you would have if you didn't go to college. Hopefully you would. That's the idea, right? But even with that said, you're probably going to come out of college and immediately be responsible for all of your bills now. Your parents probably aren't going to cover anything anymore. And at the same time as they're not willing to cover anything anymore, you're also most likely, most students probably had to take on some debt to go to college. So you're going to have to start paying on your student loans at a certain point after you get out of college. So now you need to do that. To get back to that dollar amount of $2,173,407.81 by the time you retire, with all those monthly expenses you're adding on top of it to your regular life, you're going to need to invest $707.86 a month for the next 42 years to make up for that difference you could have had by front loading all of those retirement goals instead of going to college. And that's just not something that I've seen people spell out that way before. So when I look at things and I actually come up with hypotheticals, that's amazing to me, because at the starting point of this video, I referenced that $1.5 million number that you're expected to make more than the average just high school graduate by graduating college. And if that's the case, and I just made up for it by adding another over $500,000 for your retirement, not talking about earning interest instead of paying interest in this scenario, I think it's probably one of the best financial arguments for not going to college, and I haven't seen anyone make it. So I just wanted to do the math out on it, share it with you, but also say to you that even though I want to put forth a good argument for something, I don't necessarily want to say that's the end-all be-all of the conversation. So since I don't immediately have any content to point you to say that I want to support going to college, I'll point you to the Urgently Firing channel, because I've really enjoyed a bunch of the content that's been put out over there recently. And I hope this video offered you some perspective on it. And I hope that channel can potentially provide you some other perspective if you're looking to make a decision on anything like that. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
So, if you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching.
2020 president candidate.